Welcome to the Sixth Wheels Consulting Podcast, dialoguing disability and discussing difference, inclusion, and all abilities in today's world. Now here are your hosts, Matthew Shapiro and Bob Nolly.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, you found your way back to episode 27. 27 of the Six Wheels Disability Consulting Podcast. Hi, it's Bob Nolly here. And here's my good friend, Matthew Shapiro. Matthew, how are you?
I'm great, Bob.
Yes, you are great. Yes, you are great.
Oh, stop it. You're making me blush over here.
Have you recovered or have you recouped from your lobbying efforts at the GA in your back to Ohio trip to Cleveland?
Yeah, we're slowly getting back into the groove, but we'll get there eventually. But I'm feeling good.
Hey, I kind of teased this episode on the last show. We talked about going to the movies. We talked about a movie that we literally, at least for me, stumbled upon called Cinemability. It's the word cinema with, half of ability at the end of it. Cinemability. And, it's kind of like Oscar time. And I sat down and you and I talked about, let's talk about this movie because it's important to the disability community. And I went and grabbed a copy and watched it. And I immediately hit rewind and watched it again. Because there were a lot of deep thoughts in there. When you watched it the first time, how did it hit you?
So I loved it. And it's really funny because I actually, for my senior thesis in college, I did a paper on how people with disabilities were portrayed in media. And so, this whole Cinemability movie was just, right up my senior thesis alley. And I was joking with somebody. I said, well, shoot, I just need to go look back at my senior thesis and see how accurate I was because, it was a topic that I addressed there. But I loved it because I thought that the documentary addressed a lot of the issues that we talk about regularly on this podcast. And, one of them being that people with disabilities aren't as represented in media as some other, minority groups. And I thought the documentary did a great job of literally going back to the Charlie Chaplin days.
Oh, even before that. Even
before that, you're right. But going back way, way far, even to I think it was the 1930s, to Frankenstein and the first motion pictures, and it really started there and worked its way up to today. And it covered a lot of topics that, lack of people being represented, disability being represented, lack of actors with disabilities being in major roles. And I thought it just really hit home. I'm curious to hear some of your perspectives.
I just, number one, people, if there are people listening to us, I don't think there are people that would stumble onto this program here and go, I wouldn't want to watch that movie. I might find that not entertaining or even depressing. That's kind of not good at all. But I started to watch it. I was thoroughly entertained. Yes, I found it intellectually stimulating, but I was entertained because it was a movie producer and director that put this thing together. High quality production values, high quality interviews, and lots of film clips, a couple of hundred film clips, quick cuts back and forth. And the interviews were well done. It was all very interesting. From the very beginning, Robert David Hall, who played the coroner on CSI, he comes up with this early statement that says the problem in media is that the disabled are either cast as pathetic or super people. And neither of those are right. And, that kind of set the tone for the whole thing.
Sure.
You want, he said that there should be an image of people who have learned to deal with their disability and that are thinking, I would like to show you what I can do.
And I couldn't agree with that more. And honestly, like, I was joking about my senior thesis, but that was kind of one of the things that sort of came out of that for me was, this whole idea of either people with disabilities or people that need to be helped, or that they're superhuman. But really, like, people with disabilities are just people, and that's something that we've talked about regularly on the podcast. And the fact that this webinar really sort of continued to hit home at that, I thought was just really interesting to think about.
I'll open the door to you on the academic stage. Well, you just left a university to get speaking there, so I'm not sharing anything with you. But if you wrote your thesis there, now nobody wants to go back and write another paper if they're not in school. Heck, but you could easily go back and do an article and recap what you did in your thesis. So you mentioned the earliest one back in the 20s. It actually started back, I couldn't believe this, 1897.
Yeah.
And Thomas Edison wrote or filmed a short, like a 30-second short on a fake beggar who is on his knees collecting coins, and, people are going by, making donations, and he gets up and runs away.
Yeah.
And, we're talking about Thomas Edison here. But the problem with that is it created such a stereotype. And, 80 years later, I can't quite do the math right, Eddie Murphy did it again.
I was just about
in the movie Trading Places, that movie he did with Aykroyd in that early scene, he's doing the same thing.
Yeah. And so I think that shows, we still have a long way to go. I think we've seen a lot of growth with the portrayal of people with disabilities. I was just looking something up on my phone because I couldn't remember the name of the movie, but I recently just saw The Upside, the movie with Kevin Hart and Bryan Cranston, with a buddy of mine, probably about a month ago. And there's always uproar when new media about disability sort of comes out. And while I understand the uproar, I also view that as an opportunity for disability to be put on the forefront of people's consciousness. And so, yes, I would absolutely love a person with a disability to play the Bryan Cranston character. But I also think that it's a way to start a conversation and continue a conversation around disability. And, the Upside movie, Bob, I don't know if you've seen it, but I loved that one too, because I thought it was a true and genuine portrayal of disability. And honestly, like, that is what I think Cinemability did a really good job of like, look, we don't want to be seen as superhuman or some people that we need to that need to be saved. We just want to be seen and given the same opportunities as other able-bodied actors. And I thought that was a really overarching theme of the documentary.
Somebody made the point, I'm about to introduce this idea here, and we can debate this for a moment, if it is a debate between the two of us. And there were two clear points of view on an issue. And there's the one that you and I have talked about tonight and earlier, saying that the disabled should be given more opportunities to play the role of disabled rather than putting an able actor in that chair.
Sure.
All right. So that tends to resonate and make sense for sure. There were disabled actors in this movie that said they had no problem with able actors playing the disabled. They had no problem with that at all.
Yeah.
And I went, what? And they were respecting the art.
Yeah. I found that interesting as well when that came up. That was actually brought up a couple of times throughout the documentary. And I think that goes back to a lot of the struggle that we have just within the disability community itself is like you have some groups of people that are like, let's use that example, that are okay with actors playing people with disabilities, and then you have other groups of people that aren't okay with it. And so there is a constant juxtaposition between the two groups. And so I think that plays into the struggle that we have as a disability community just as a whole, because we're not able to come to a consensus on certain things. And I feel like that's why we are still struggling today to get a lot of the things that we talk about on this podcast on a regular basis. And so I found that to be very interesting myself. Where do you come down on that?
You know, you sold me when you said there should be more opportunities, you know, for the disabled to play those roles, and not just movies, but TV as well, of course.
Sure.
And then I heard Gary Marshall. Now, Gary Marshall just passed away over the past year. And, you know, he's a very famous producer. And remind me again, what did he produce? We'll have to look. I can't look him up right now because I'm reading the notes here. That's no excuse. But for example, you know, he did a long list of movies. He did things like Laverne and Shirley, you know, or let's talk about Laverne and Shirley. Now I'm going to get sidetracked. When Gary Marshall just said, but you got to have talent.
Yes.
He cast disabled actors in roles, including children. And people were telling me, Gary, you can't do that with children. That's just too depressing for an audience. He goes, well, they're children that grow up and, you know, they're going to be fine. So they're in the picture.
Was that the producer that said, I believe he said he had a granddaughter who was a wheelchair user?
Right. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I think she was in like Princess Bride or whatever.
Yes.
With Anne Hathaway or whatever.
Yeah.
We're sitting here
The Princess Diaries.
Princess Diaries, thank you.
People are screaming at us. No, it's not the Princess Bride. Bob, please.
Well, I'll take the blame for that one, Bob.
No. So, you know, he said, but you got to learn how to act. I mean, you've got to know how to act. The whole picture of it, there were a couple of times, and of course, it's the director putting her own story together. There was one actor whose name, God, I can't come up with. He was a small person, and his inspiration when he made the connection was Miguelito Loveless in the Wild Wild West.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I remember that part.
You know, it's a function of age. I mean, I remember sitting down the afternoon and watching the Wild Wild West and Robert Conrad and Ross Martin kicking the heck out of people left to right all over the frontier in the West. But, you know, on the episodes that Dr. Loveless was on, that was always a tough time for James. And that actor, Michael Dunn, got an Oscar nomination for Ship of Fools. And everybody said that he was just a normal guy, a great actor, a normal guy. And he felt that Hollywood cast Westerns in what amounted to be, you know, kind of a pretty racist way, where you have an Indian, and you're going to cast some guy from Brooklyn and darken his skin.
Yeah, that's the blackface argument.
No, and the blackface argument being, you know, here we are in Virginia bringing that up again. The argument being that putting an abled actor in a chair in a disabled role is like using blackface on a white actor.
Sure.
I didn't quite get there. I respect the depth of that commitment to that, but I didn't quite get there.
Out of curiosity, can I ask why you didn't get there?
Because, you know, that was at the other extreme of the spectrum for me. I mean, I could get there. I mean, you know, we'll talk about this again. I'm looking at a list of the history of how this all developed. And, you know, of course, the Westerns were a big deal. And they had actors, you know, they had 21st century actors that go, and Westerns never did it for me. Of course they didn't do anything for you, but, you know, the Westerns was a big deal. Look at the number of seasons Gunsmoke was on, and there was Chester. there was Dennis Weaver playing Chester. And there was another show I had never heard of, which is amazing for me. Tate. Tate was a one-armed gunfighter.
I had not heard of that show either.
I had not heard of that at all. But the one that stuck everybody, that seemed to be a linchpin that held everybody together, was Ironside.
Yep, you were going there.
Ironside.
Yeah.
Raymond Burr. And Raymond Burr is important in my household, my family history, because Perry Mason was one of my favorite shows. Not the later Perry Mason, the old ones that were in black and white, that the house came to a standstill every day. You could come in with a bee sting or something like that, but if it was a Perry Mason time, no, just
I don't
wait.
know. I don't know anything about black and white times, Bob.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. We're done for tonight. No, so everybody stands at Ironside, and they showed a clip where the doctor tells him he's never going to walk again, and he just says he doesn't want pity. They're waiting for him to break down, and he says Ironside was the guy that just got over it.
Well, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was like, okay, please leave.
Yes, just like that. That was the scene. Please leave. I have things to do. And of course, the one hook on that show was this truck that he moved around in, and his private investigators that went with him, and the guy that drove the truck. And that was such a big hook that people started reaching out to the manufacturer. It was just a prop.
Yeah,
it wasn't real. It was just a prop.
Yeah, and that was where the ramp van or the the van with the lift on it, that's where it sort of got its start.
Absolutely.
Really cool.
Perry Mason once again. So we go through all of these things. So that was a big one. And that, The Miracle Worker happened with Patty Duke, and that was a great movie as well. But then the Vietnam vets period, that became the next linchpin.
Sure.
when Ron Kovic and Tom Cruise got together for Born on the 4th of July.
And the great thing for me as being a young person was I had not heard of some of these movies. And so one of the fun things I think I might try and do if I go back and when let me not say if, but when I go back and watch the film again, is try and catalog as many of the films that I can so that I could go back and watch some of these, because I would be curious to watch as a whole how disability and movie has sort of evolved over time.
Yeah. Oh my God. We could talk about this forever. We're just about eating up all the time, but two points I wanted to make. One other thing I didn't realize, the issue that the disabled sometimes want to hide their disability.
Yes.
Squiggy on Laverne and Shirley had MS, and he played that role for 15 years and didn't tell anybody.
Yes.
They just thought he drank all the time.
Yes.
I was just blown away by that.
I thought that was funny that he's like, should I tell them, or should I just pretend I'm drunk all the time? I don't know.
Because that was the back of the day. I guess there were people in Hollywood that were, drunk all the time. God, yes. I don't know.
Yes.
Two final thoughts I took away for this. Jamie Foxx, who played Ray Charles, and went through the process of putting on prosthetics to be blind, not just to shoot a scene, but all day. He put them in 6 a.m. and kept them in till 10 p.m.
Yeah, he kept his eyes, like they did something, like you said, with prosthetics, where his eyes were shut the entire time. And I thought it was really interesting because one of the things he mentioned, and I hear this from a lot of people who aren't initially blind, but then for whatever reason become blind. They often say, and people who are blind and people who have visual impairments say this as well, that their other senses become heightened.
Yeah, Fox said that his hearing got much better.
Yeah, I thought it was
much more nuanced, I think was his word.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that he brought that up. Taking away that one sense, the rest of his senses became more heightened.
And the other thing that the comment that was made, all right, so now the two things. One, he said, as a society, we're still learning about everybody.
I would agree with that.
I mean, that's a pretty broad statement, but was kind of like delivered in the mode of a benediction, and he's right. And I just had the utmost respect for that because of the way he played through the Ray Charles role.
Well, and I think that goes back to what we often talk about a lot on this podcast, which is, we have a long way to go within the disability community, and while we may get frustrated that we're not there and we're not where we want to be, he's right that we are still learning about people. Does it make it right or wrong? No, it doesn't. But we still do have a long way to go.
Yeah, and because somebody in the disability community, I don't want to attribute this to somebody incorrectly, so I just want to name them. They just said the disability community is still so fragmented.
Yes. And that's something that we have even talked about outside of this documentary, that the fragmentation amongst the disability community certainly, I think, makes it more challenging to have our voices be more effectively heard on a number of different levels.
Yeah, we're out of time. We didn't even talk about Forrest Gump.
Oh, that's the best movie of all time. I love Jenny.
Oh, my Jenny. Oh, boy. What a great movie.
That's a classic.
So if you want to do this, here's your homework. Yeah, here am I giving you homework. Well, I'm a teacher, sure. Go, if you still have a copy of that or got this movie available to you, go wait for the credits, deep in the credits. Like about 5 minutes in when they always tell you what all the songs were and all the music was in the movie, they list all the movies they had clip froms there.
Oh, that's awesome. I need to go do that.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anyone who's interested in this topic. I found this movie on Amazon Prime, and so I was able to get it in that way, and I shot it up on my TV and was able to catch it that way. But it was I believe the movie ran about an hour and 37 minutes, and
just about exactly, yeah.
But I have a young man's memory, I guess.
What did you say?
I said,
just kidding. I'm just kidding. Oh, no.
Right? That was good. That was fun. I laughed at that.
Oh, I'm looking at the notes here. We didn't talk about My Left Foot. We didn't talk about Coming Home. Oh, my gosh.
Let's do this. So it seems like you have a lot of notes. So let's do another episode on this down the road.
We'll talk about, we'll definitely do this. And folks, if you're listening to us, thanks. If you're listening to us, go to iTunes or Apple Podcast, leave us some feedback. Leave us a nice 5-star review. Thank you for that. Leave us a great comment, and we'll give you a shout out here. The movie you want is Cinemability. Cinemability.
We're so excited because, Bob, I believe we're getting close to a milestone, aren't we, sir?
Yeah, you almost got 1,000 friends here listening to you. That's a big number. That? The first 1,000 is a huge number.
Yes, and we just want to thank all of our listeners that listen to our podcasts on whatever platform they do it on. We want to keep doing this program so that you all can have hopefully primetime content, and we just thank you very much for your continued support.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to episode 27 of the Six Wheels Disability Consulting Podcast. Keep thinking inclusion. Keep rolling on. For my buddy Matthew Shapiro, this is Bob Nolly. Take care of each other. See you next time.
Bye, everybody.